Hi, and welcome to my new YouTube.
Popping in because I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Cece, and this is Seeing Evil, Drawing Evil. Now, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Here, I'm going to tell you stories about mysteries or crimes, mostly serial killers, and I will draw the killer or the victim, and we'll just enjoy a crazy story, because who doesn't love crime stories, right? Like crime stories, and you just like something to look at while you listen, a little ASMR, then you know what? This is the channel for you. Do not expect the drawings to be good, because we're just not there yet. I started this channel because my family and friends think that my drawings of people look like sketch artist renditions of them and not actual pictures of them. I'm rambling on. Let's get to the story. Trigger warning, the following video contains extreme violence and sexual assault. Today, we are talking about Samuel Little. Have you heard of him? Also, so relevant to my new page because he draws his victims. See, I draw him, he draws his victims. I'm glad he's dead. Spoiler alert, he's dead now. Samuel Little was born on June 7th, 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia. Now, he says his mom was a prostitute, but that's not confirmed, or sex worker. I'm sorry. Those are his words. But he also says that by the time he was 4, his mom, and he remembers this vividly, dropped him off on a street corner. Just like, bye, Sam. Take care of yourself. Okay, pull your pants up, son. Yeah, that happened. Or so he says. He says that happened. And after his mom abandoned him, he was moved to Lorain, Ohio, where his grandmother raised him. Now, people that knew him growing up said he was a lot of trouble. And, I get the feeling that he was just one of those kids that was just born bad. But, maybe it had something to do with him being abandoned when he was 4 and having that vivid memory. But when we get into the story, you're going to be like, oh, wow, he's really bad. Like, that's not normal. It's not normal. For instance, his earliest memory of wanting to strangle women was when he was in kindergarten. His kindergarten teacher was standing up in front of the class, teaching, and, she's speaking, and he said she was stroking her neck, and he was just thrilled. He was watching her, women don't have Adam's apples, do they? He was watching her neck, and he wanted to strangle her. Like, he was thrilled by this. I just don't think being abandoned would do that to a person. I feel like there'd have to be something wrong with them. Don't you? I mean, he also says he was born in prison, but still. I mean, no, Samuel, you're sick. You're a sick boy. He also says that as a teenager, he was a collector of true crime novels and like comic books and stuff like that. And he especially loved those magazines and stuff that depicted strangling. Like, he was already super ready to become who he became. That was the weirdest sentence, and I think I'll probably delete it. Somehow, by the time he was 16, he was in Omaha, Nebraska. Don't ask me how. I couldn't find it. But at that point, he is arrested for breaking and entering and ends up in a juvenile facility. There, they also said that he was so much trouble. He got so many infractions, but was eventually released when he was 18 years old. Oh my gosh, is it because I'm talking about a strangler? That's weird. Anyway, so when Samuel gets out of juvie, he jumps right into a life of crime. For the next 3 years, he's in and out of jail for petty theft, breaking and entering, assault, things like that. But he's never held for long periods of time. At 21, Samuel was arrested for breaking into a furniture store in Ohio, and that was where he met his partner in crime. Apparently, Samuel had a partner when he robbed this furniture store, so they go into the jail together, and she ends up in a cell with a lady named Jean Dorsey. I'm sorry, my mind literally just went completely blank. Anyways, so this girl, she didn't want to go down like Samuel, and she told this Jean Dorsey that she was going to rat on Samuel. And I guess Jean Dorsey did not like a narc because she got a message to Samuel that his girlfriend was about to narc on him and have him take all the blame. And so, I don't know if he did or not, but he got a 3-year sentence. Well, I guess when Jean did that for him, like, that created just like a bond of trust between them. And they would spend the rest of her life traveling together around the country, shoplifting and fencing items so that they could pay for their travel. He said that she taught him everything he knew about shoplifting after that, and that she was a great partner. He says that they were physical with each other, but he also says that he doesn't think that he says adamantly that she didn't know about any of his crimes. I think she might have. I mean, how do you not know when, your friend with benefits goes out at night and goes hunting for women and killing them? Like, how do you not know that? Meanwhile, they must not have been that good because he was arrested 11 more times by 1975. Samuel brags that he murdered several women right under the cops' noses. He says that his first murder was in 1971, and guess where he met the woman? Behind a furniture store. Samuel, what is it with it? Does he just like hang out around furniture stores? Anyway. Now he says he met this woman and had no intention of murdering her at first. He just wanted to, violently take advantage of her. I hate that word. And, maybe just play a little bit of choking games or something. But he lured her by taking her out to eat because that turned him on a lot. He liked to take women out to eat so he could watch them swallow. And I guess that this woman had like a special kind of swallow because she was the one. She was first. He really liked her neck. Samuel would continue this MO throughout his murderous career. He was asked by police if he ever used any tools or if he ever changed up his MO, and he was like, no. He would offer them drugs or take them somewhere to eat, and he always strangled with his hands, and because that very first time he just loved it so much, and he would never ever change it up. He said it was the only way. I guess this is the best place to add this in, and it is really disturbing. So if you need to fast forward. After his arrest, the officers noticed how humongous his hands were, and he just offered up that because he had such big hands, he could strangle a woman with one hand and use the other one to pleasure himself. I'm sorry, I just got lost picturing that, and I am just, wow. Anyway, we talked about Samuel getting away with murder right in front of the cops. Let me tell you about a couple situations. Well, I'll just give you one example, but there's like 2 or 3 of them that are exactly the same. He tells a story where he goes into like a vacant lot or something, and he has a woman in the backseat of his car, and he's back there with her. He has beat her unconscious. He has strangled her. He has taken advantage of her violently, and a police officer pulls up. When Samuel notices the police officer, he gets out of the vehicle and zips up his pants and, gets all situated. And the officer's like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, oh, nothing much. Me and my wife back here, we're just having some fun time, Yeah. And the cop's like super casual, but he's like shining his light in the car, and Samuel just steps to another direction and gets his attention and just has like a pleasant conversation with him. And then the police man gets in his car and drives off. So he learned a new trick, and he does that, he says, a couple more times at least. So literally, police are going up to his car. There is a dead body in the back seat that he is violating, and they're just like, oh, have fun, knocking boots, yeah. Woo. But finally, Samuel has somebody get away from him alive, right? So he's in California, and he attacks this girl named Lori Barrows. He's got her in the car. He's strangling her. He's raping her. He beats her to unconscious or strangles her to unconscious. Oh, because that was something he really liked to do. He liked to strangle people to unconscious and then let them come back. And he liked to strangle them over and over again before he let them die. Anyways, I guess he thought at this point Lori was dead. So he just he's driving down the road and he just kicks her out of the car. And she goes rolling down the road and she just plays dead until he's gone. Lori goes to the police. She's like, this guy beat me unconscious and was strangling me and he sexually assaulted me and whatnot. But because she was a prostitute, all of his victims were prostitutes or drug addicts or street people. They were like, okay, so. No, but he gets arrested and gets let go of because none of the witnesses or herself were reliable. So they just let him out of jail. And that's what Sammy was counting on, He knew that these people were unreliable and that nobody cared about them. And he says in his tapes, why would you go after somebody that someone would miss or that someone would believe? However, they did have a description of his car, and one night a police officer drove up on him in a vacant lot, like several times before, and saw this particular vehicle, and he remembered Lori Barrows talking about, what happened to her, and he was like, that's the car, that must be the guy. So he goes up and looks in there, and yes, there is an unconscious woman in the car. So he ends up facing charges for both Lori Barrows' attack and the other victim, but because the jury could not trust the testimony of all these people, most of the charges he got off on. He was acquitted on most of the charges and was only given 4 years in prison. And that's only because he pled guilty to 2 counts of assault. And then 2.5 years later, guess what? He gets out because Sammy's a good boy. So now we know of several times of Samuel literally getting away with murder. And he's getting a big head, he feels like he can do no wrong. So he continues doing this for 30 years. He does get caught a couple more times. In 1982, he's arrested in Pascagoula, Mississippi for the murder of Melinda Rose Lupre. She was 22. But guess what? The jury did not indict him. But why? Well, because she was what I learned the police call the not dead, a sex worker. Juries don't trust people from the street, and I guess they don't care about victims on the street. And I find that really sad because that's somebody's daughter. While he was waiting for his indictment in Mississippi, he was charged with another murder in Florida for a girl named Patricia Ann Mount. Now, he was indicted for that and he was tried, but he was acquitted for the same reasons we just talked about. After that, he moved to Los Angeles where he committed at least 10 more murders. And that detail becomes important later in the story because he didn't just murder people in Mississippi and Florida and Ohio. It was 14 states. And he claims to have killed at least 63 victims. He describes 63 murders in detail and drew pictures of at least 28 of them that were very accurate and helped families actually find their missing family members. Thanks, Sammy. You're so helpful. Anyway, Samuel would continue killing until 2005 when he turned 65 years old because that's the age of retirement. No, I'm just kidding. That's not why he quit. He actually quit because he suffered from diabetes and heart problems and other health issues. And he started to realize that at his age, he would no longer be able to commit his murders and have the strength to hide the bodies or whatever because of his physical ailments that he had. It was just time to hang up his strangler hat. So he'd gotten away with murder for 30 years. Are we curious of how he got caught? Well, let me tell you. Remember I told you that he liked to lure his victims by giving them drugs? Well, he actually had some old narcotics charges in LA, and he was found in a homeless shelter in Louisville, Kentucky, and was extradited to LA for these narcotics charges. Interestingly enough, since the 80s, DNA had become a lot more advanced, right? Being picked up on this narcotics charge, of course, these days they take your DNA. So they took his DNA and they put it in a system and they compared it against some murders that had happened in the 80s. And guess what? Samuel's DNA matched some victims. DNA matched him to the murders of Carol Eileen Alford, who was murdered on July 13th, 1987, Guadalupe Duarte Apodaca, killed on September 3rd, 1987, and Aubrey Nelson Everett, killed on August 14th, 1989. All three girls were found on the streets in LA within a 5-mile radius, and Samuel admittedly lived in that area during those times. We're so far in the video, like I'm like, if I stutter. So Samuel was charged for those murders on January 7th, 2013. A few months later, he was being investigated for over 36 murders all across the country. And good news, the Lepre, remember Melinda Rose Lepre, that was her name. Her case was reopened. In total, Samuel was tested for 93 murders across the United States. He has only confessed and been confirmed of committing 60 murders. However, he was having interviews going on up until he was just almost gone. Remember, he was having health problems. So investigators were interviewing him up to like the very last point they could, and they only got 60 out of him, but they believe that there are far in excess of 90 more murders that he has committed. Samuel claims to only have killed women, except that there was one transgender woman who, I don't remember what he said in the videos, but basically he was fooled, right? And her name was Marion, and that was in Florida in the 70s. You guys, there is way too much to tell here. Like, honestly, there are hours and hours and hours of videotape of him confessing to crimes and laughing about it while saying he's sorry and giving great detail. And I couldn't watch all of them, and I've already tried to forget. Samuel was tried and convicted of those 3 murders that happened in LA, and he received 3 consecutive life sentences. That was in 2014, and he died on January 30th of 2020. So he was 80 years old. Is that right? 80 years old. He died of complications from diabetes and other ailments. And honestly, I mean, he was just old, right? Anyway, I hope you like the drawing. Especially, I hope you enjoyed our time today, and I hope you come back. Maybe subscribe, maybe like, maybe leave a comment, maybe tell me you hated the video. You know, anything helps. Is there still a dislike button? I will be posting a video every week. I have not come up with a day that's gonna work for me, because right now we're just trying to figure out how to edit a video, right? So I hope to see you again. My name is Cece, and I hope you had as much fun as I did. Does he look good? What do you think? Does it look like him at all? Listen, I already drew the picture because, you know, I'm not drawing right now. I think I did a pretty good job.